Isi mama.
Medali emas sebanyak-banyaknya, dan Indonesia tentunya sudah atau sementara sudah berhasil meraih satu medali emas melalui Mas Niari Bom. Nanti kita tunggu di program nomor berikutnya di cabang renang ini, di mana para penang Indonesia baik putra dan putri jumlah 23 renang. Nanti akan maju ke babak final langsung sore nanti. Itu harapan juga masih terbuka lebar bagi Amplop bisa meraih medali emas dalam beberapa isian. Bisa juga dilakukan strategi bagi para penang tidak menunjukkan kebolehnya secara full. Dan kita lihat sendiri penang putri kita di nomor daya punggung yakni Mas Yari Gold saat babak isian di hit kedua berada di urutan ketiga, dan di babak final Mas Yari ini berhasil membuat kita dengan meraih medali emas. Tentunya apa juga dalam kompetisi yang sendiri supaya tidak diketahui oleh dia lawan-lawannya, dan tentu itu adalah butuh perjuangan yang ekstra keras untuk bisa meraih medali emas. Masih kita tunggu di nomor berikutnya di cabang renang yang berlangsung di akuatik sport village. Belum nonton, lagi akan kita ikuti di nomor 200 meter putri masih kita lihat ada 4 renang putri yang akan berlomba di sini. Ya, 200 meter gaya bebas lintasan pertama ada dari tuan rumah Onggar Raki laporan dari Singapura Ijijan Indonesia dan dari Vietnam dan AI pada lintasan 5 nanti Patricia Yusita Sari sudah 200 gaya bebas putri sebentar lagi akan berlangsung. Tempat putaran nanti yang akan dilakukan kita lihat saudara penonton 50 meter akan dituju oleh 4 orang dalam gaya bebas 200 meter. Kita tunggu ya, start sudah dilakukan. Orang kita berada di lintasan 5 Patricia Yusita Apsari diapit oleh penang tuan rumah dan juga dari Singapura Onggar Raki Jijijan dan Ai. Kita masih menuju 50 meter pertama 100 meter yang tempat penang putri ini.
Pengen di sana dengan anak-anak sama dari pokoknya.
Sama siapa?
Sama Muti. Ya bawa aja ke sana.
Indonesia 100 meter sudah dituju saudara penonton. Masih kita saksikan saudara penonton bagaimana hasil dari 150 ditempuh, tinggal 1 putaran lagi. Cepat sekali saudara penonton. Para penonton yang berada di akuatik finish ada final. Ya, incar dari pertama kita tunggu saudara penonton. Berapa meter lagi akan berakhir. Indonesia dari yang dari Singapura jauh meninggalkan kawan-kawannya. Yang pertama di nomor 200 meter gaya bebas putri yang berakhir sudah dan Jijijan dari Singapura karena di urutan pertama sementara Patricia Yusita Sari berada di urutan 4. Tentu ini belum hasil
Beda ya. Perempuannya ya, koper ya, beda kayak cowok ya.
Sementara inilah hasil yang kedua segera berlangsung. Masih
In the following videos, we are going to learn about Webpack plugins. A plugin is a JavaScript library that adds functionality to the Webpack itself. Plugins can do everything that loaders cannot do. We use loaders when we need to import different files. When we need to import CSS files, we use CSS loader. When we need to import XML files, we use XML loader. But what if you need to do something else than importing a new type of file? With plugins, you can do much more than that. You can define global constants across the whole application. You can minify your resulting bundle so it consumes less space on disk and is faster to download. You can generate other files besides bundle.js. Webpack tool itself utilizes the same plugin system that you can use in your Webpack configurations. In the following videos, we are going to have a look at
Yang kedua, sejajar dalam foto. Kita lihat sementara ini lintasan Cingwi dari Singapura dari lain biasanya mendominasi dan diumumkan pada jam 6 sampai ke Thailand, Filipina, dan tuan rumah Vietnam. Dan Indonesia diharapkan bisa bersaing dengan negara-negara tersebut. Dari Thailand, sementara Filipina masih Papua dari Thailand masih berada di urutan pertama, disusul di lintasan 6 dan Chu Monasco yang dari Filipina maupun di belakang, dan kita lihat coba akan menggeser ya 50 meter terakhir masih Cingwi dari Singapura berada di urutan pertama, disusul kita lihat dengan dari Thailand Vanua masih kita temukan tetap lintasan 5 dan 6. Vegan dari Singapura. Dalam ketentuan hasil yang dicapai tentu ada 4 pemenang yang nanti akan maju ke babak final yang berlangsung nanti sore ini. Menang dari
Bapak di sana sedang pulang. Saya udah bukit tak. Ini di sana.
Bentar ya, Mi.
yang di akhir finish tadi seorang dari Thailand laju dengan cepat kedua dari Singapura Cingwi
Mana? Sejarah ini belum.
kita tunggu
Biasa pakai HP.
Tapi
Kakek-kakek yang lagi umur.
siapa? Siapa? Oh.
Filipina lebih banyak mendominasi, dan tentu kita akan berusaha untuk bisa meraih medali Mars, kemudian kita berikutnya di nomor 100 meter kita ada 6 renang saudara. Nanti ada di lintasan 2 ada pintu Mo dari Vietnam. Lintasan 3 ada Pian Singkat Mo dari Malaysia. Lintasan 4 ada Jin Webpack dari Singapura. Lintasan 5 ada Vietnam. Lintasan 6 ada Jin Vietnam dari Malaysia. Dan Sutui dari Kamboja. Putra yang berlomba di 100 meter gaya kuku pertama bagi nanti ini kita tunggu. Nah, pernah sudah bersiap di papan start. Kita tunggu saudara penonton. Jangan-jangan sangat sempurna dilakukan oleh 6 renang. Inisiatif pertama masih sejajar saudara penonton. Lintasan 4 renang dari Singapura kali ini berada di depan, juga disusul oleh renang dari Malaysia, Rian Sing Renggau. Ya, 50 meter saudara penonton. Dari lintasan 4 Yen kuat dari Singapura. Sementara berada di urutan pertama. Kita tunggu semakin cepat renang ini untuk sampai garis finish dan papan finish. Ya. Satu, ya. Lintasan 4 renang dari Singapura. Yen Bin Kuat berada di urutan pertama. Susul Rian Sing Renggau dari Malaysia berada di urutan kedua. Sementara Jin Vietnam dari Malaysia juga berada di urutan ketiga. Bila saudara menonton menjelang papan finish setelah langsung hasilnya yang kuat dari Singapura dengan 44,65 detik. Sementara renang dari Malaysia dia di berada di urutan kedua dengan 45,5. Sebentar lagi kita ikuti di titik yang kedua, masih di 100 meter gaya kuku putra. Ada Glenn Victor Tanto dan ada Ru Amelia Putri. Karena ini masih ada masa ini karena dari Filipina dan dari Kamboja. Nah, kita Glenn Victor berada di lintasan 300 dan Ru Amelia berada di lintasan 6. Masih melakukan persiapan. lintasan 5 lihat biasa pernah saudara pernah 100 meter saya di awal 50 meter yang akan dituju oleh 6 orang lain.
ngaco ya, anaknya itu disembunyiin, diamanin, tapi di mana coba nyimpennya? Di dalam oven. Belum, ibunya teh belum bisa. Ini kan si kebersihan kan pas lagi dijual sama suaminya, bukan juga di kebersihan. Pakai dalam itu. Pernah melihat sekali lagi pas pakai anjir pekerjaan bagus banget. Kalau pakai baju biasa kan biasa gitu kayak pokok gitu kan. Ini jalan teh pas pakai baju ini
Add some of the most popular Webpack plugins. In this video, we are going to learn how to minify our JavaScript bundle. But first, let's understand why we need to minify it. Overall, we are striving for the best experience for our customers. We want our websites to load fast. If your customers are using a website on mobile, then the website performance is crucial for them. If we make the size of the JavaScript file smaller, then the whole website will load faster. What's more, it will consume less internet traffic. Now, let's have a look at our current bundle size. Our bundle now is inside this folder, and I'll right-click on it and open it in the file manager. And here I can get more information about this file. And here we can see that our file currently consumes 21 kilobytes of disk space. Let's figure out how to make it smaller. In order to make our bundle smaller, I will need to add a special plugin to Webpack. This plugin is called Cursor plugin. So let's add Cursor plugin and see if the bundle size changes after that. I will go to Webpack config.js file and add a new section there which is called plugins. This is a JavaScript array. You can put here as many plugins as you want. For now, I will put here only one plugin. Pay attention that I am creating a new instance of Cursor plugin here. Now we need to import Cursor plugin at the beginning of the file. Since we are using a new plugin here, we need to install it. So I will go to my terminal and install this plugin. All Webpack plugins should be installed with --save -dev option to indicate that they are used as development dependencies. Webpack plugin is a development dependency because we need it only during the build process. If we use --save option without the dev part, then it would be considered a production dependency. Production dependencies are required when we publish our project to production servers. However, we usually don't need Webpack plugins on production servers. That's why it's a development dependency. By the way, if you are using Webpack version 5 or above, you don't need to install this plugin. Webpack version 5 comes with the latest Cursor Webpack plugin out of the box. Now let's run Webpack and check the bundle size one more time. The build is done. Let's go to the editor again and look how many kilobytes our bundle.js file consumes now. So I will open it in the file manager, and here I will look again in the information, and here you can see that it now consumes only 7 kilobytes. So we have just made our bundle size smaller. As a side note, I would like to mention here that using Cursor plugin is a new way of minifying your JavaScript bundles. Earlier, Webpack was using Uglify.js plugin for the same purposes. You can still use Uglify.js plugin and get the same results. However, using Cursor plugin is the recommended way nowadays. In this video, we are going to learn how to extract our CSS into a separate file. This video consists of two parts. This is part 1. Some time ago, we learned how to import CSS inside our JavaScript files. We did it using CSS loader and style loader. As you can see, all our styles are inside the style tag right here. Even though this is fine for development purposes, this is not good for production. Using this approach, all our styles are bundled together with our JavaScript code inside a single file called bundle.js. Styles are dynamically added to the document object model by JavaScript during runtime. However, there is one problem with this approach. Our bundle file will become very big after some time, and big files need more time to load. What we can do here is extract all our CSS into a separate file that will be generated alongside our JavaScript bundle. This way, we'll have two bundles instead of one. Why is it better than having one bundle? First, this will make the size of our JavaScript bundle much smaller, so it will be faster to download. And second, this will allow us to load several files in parallel, making overall experience even better. Let's do something with our styles. We need to add a new plugin inside our Webpack configuration. The name of this plugin is Mini CSS Extract plugin. So I'm going to add a new plugin to the list of plugins. This will extract our CSS into a separate file, and we can even specify the name of this file. Now we need to modify our rules for CSS and Sass in order to use Mini CSS Extract plugin. First, I will change the rule for CSS. I need to replace style loader with Mini CSS Extract plugin.loader. Now I need to do the same for the Sass rule. We also need to import this plugin at the beginning of the file. Since we are using a new plugin here, we need to install it. Now let's run the build process and check if we get something new in the dist folder. As you can see, we are having one additional file inside the dist folder, and this file is called styles.css. Now we need to include this file inside our HTML markup. Let's check if everything works in the browser. As you can see, our styles work as before. However, now we don't have any styles inside our style tag. Actually, there is no style tag at all. Instead, we are having the styles inside an external file. So let's go to the text editor and look inside the generated styles.css. Here is all our CSS from the whole application. Currently, our application consists only of one component, Hello World button. Let's create another component with some styles and check if all the CSS from both components goes into styles.css file. We'll create a component named heading. So now I will create a heading directory inside the components directory. And inside this directory I will create a new file, heading.js. Let's create a new class for our component. This class will have only one method called render. This method will create an h1 element and insert it into the body element. I will put some text inside h1. And I will add this h1 element to the body. Now we need to export this class. Okay, our new component is finished, and what I'd like to do now is import our styles at the top of the file. We don't have any styles for this component yet, but we'll create them in a moment. Let's create a new file for our styles. I created this file inside the same directory as the JavaScript file. This file will be very simple. We'll just set a color of an h1 element. I will put gray here. It will be enough for this example. Now let's import our new component inside index.js. We need to create an instance of the heading component and then call the render method. Let's run the build process and have a look at the dis folder. I'm going back to my editor and open styles.css. And here we can see that CSS for both our components is inside. These styles correspond to the Hello World button component. And these two lines correspond to the heading component. In other words, Mini CSS Extract plugin extracts all our styles from the application and puts them inside a single CSS file under the dis folder. Now let's check our application in the browser. I refreshed my page in the browser and we got a new heading here, which says Webpack is awesome, which is pretty much true. In this video, we learned how to extract our
Streaming aku nggak ada yang nonton sedih. Ya daripada orang belajar suka nggak dia ke view. Apa? Ya ini kan aku lagi belajar dulu. Server lagi dibikin.
Or CSS into a separate file. In this video, we are going to talk about browser caching and how Webpack can help us with that. This time, we'll start with the theory before writing any code. As you might know, every time your browser loads a website, it downloads all the assets required by this website. Each website is different, however, most of them require some JavaScript and CSS in order to work properly. and some websites require lots of JavaScript. Each time. In this video, we are going to talk about browser caching and how Webpack can help us with that. This time, we'll start with the theory before writing any code. As you might know, every time your browser loads a website, it downloads all the assets required by this website. Each website is different. However, most of them require some JavaScript and CSS in order to work properly. And some websites require lots of JavaScript. Each time the user reloads the page, the browser downloads all those files from the internet. This may become an issue, especially if your customers browse your website using mobile devices with slow internet connection. Each time they go to a new page, they need to wait several minutes until the page is ready. Fortunately, there is a solution to this problem, and it's called browser caching. If the file didn't change between the page reloads, your browser can save it in a specific place. This place is called cache. When you open this page again, browser won't download this file again. It will take this file from cache. This technique helps to save lots of time and traffic. However, this may lead to another issue. What if you fixed a bug on your website and your JavaScript file has been changed? If the browser always takes this file from cache, your customers will never get the new version. Therefore, we need a mechanism for updating the cache. One of the most popular approaches is creating a new file with a new name each time you make a change. Browsers remember files by name. Therefore, if the name changes, browsers will download the new version. Well, it doesn't mean that we need to change the file name manually every time we change our code. Webpack can do this automatically. Let's go to the Webpack configuration file. One of the best practices is to add MD5 hash to the name of the file. This MD5 hash depends on the contents of the file. This way, Webpack will generate the new file name only if there were some changes inside. It doesn't mean that approaches is created. What if you fixed a bug? When you open this page again, browser won't download this file again. It will take this file from cache. This technique helps to save lots of time and traffic. However, this may lead to another issue. What if you fixed a bug on your website? And your JavaScript file has been changed. If the browser always takes this file from cache, your customers will never get the new version. Therefore, we need a mechanism for updating the cache. One of the most popular approaches is creating a new file with a new name each time you make a change. Browsers remember files by name. Therefore, if the name changes, browsers will download the new version. Well, it doesn't mean that we need to change the file name manually every time we change our code. Webpack can do this automatically. Let's go to the Webpack configuration file. One of the best practices is to add MD5 hash to the name of the file. This MD5 hash depends on the contents of the file. This way, Webpack will generate the new file name only if there were some changes inside. It's easy to explain by example. Imagine you changed something in your CSS, but you didn't touch your JavaScript. In this case, Webpack will generate the new name for your CSS file, but it will use the previous name for the JavaScript file. And during the next page reload, your customers will download the new CSS file, but they will get the JavaScript file from cache. In order for this to work, we just need to add content hash in square brackets to the output file name. Now let's run Webpack in the terminal and need to add content hash in square brackets to the output file name. Now let's run Webpack in the terminal and check the dist folder. You see, we have two JavaScript files in the dist folder. One is bundle.js and another one is bundle.css. some strange sequence of characters .js. This sequence of characters is MD5 hash, and it stays the same if there were no code changes. Let's run Webpack again and have a look at the dist folder one more time. I just run Webpack and we still have the same JavaScript files in the dist folder. Let's now change something inside our JavaScript. I have added only one line of code here. Let's run Webpack again and have a look at the dist folder. Now we have 3 JavaScript files in the dist folder. That's because Webpack generated the new JavaScript file with different MD5 hash. Now let's remove this line of code. It was needed for demonstration purposes. By the way, this also works for CSS files. We just need to add content hash in square brackets to the mini CSS extract plugin configuration. Let's run Webpack again and have a look at the dist folder. Now there is another CSS file in the dist folder, and this CSS file contains MD5 hash as well. At the moment, our dist folder is quite cluttered, and most of the files inside are redundant. These are the leftovers from the previous builds. That's because the names of our bundles contain MD5 hash. This MD5 hash is generated based on the contents of the file. Each time you change something inside any file, its MD5 hash changes as well. That's why we are getting new bundles with every code change. In this video, we'll see how we can remove old bundles from the dist folder before generating the new bundles. I bet you already guessed that Webpack has a plugin for that. You're right, and the name of this plugin is Clean Webpack Plugin. So let's add this plugin to the plugins array. Each time you run the build process, Clean Webpack plugin will clean the output.path folder. This is the output.path folder. In our case, this is the dist folder. But what do I mean by cleaning? Every time we run Webpack, Clean Webpack plugin simply removes all the files from this folder. This way, Webpack ensures that it has absolutely clean folder before putting anything else to it. We also need to import Clean Webpack plugin in order to be able to use it. Since we are using a new plugin here, we need to install it. As you remember, our dist folder currently contains 5 different files inside. So now, let's run the build process. Let's run the build. As you remember, our dist folder currently contains 5 different files inside. So now, let's run the build process. Since we are using a new to be able to use this folder, what do I mean? This is the output will clean the output.path folder. As you remember, our dist folder currently contains 5 different files inside. So now, let's run the build process. And now the dist folder contains only 2 files. That's because Clean Webpack plugin has removed other files from the dist folder. By the way, it's possible to clean multiple folders with this plugin. You just need to provide a couple of options when instantiating this plugin in the plugins array. Let's imagine you have one more folder generated by some other tool, where you store some additional CSS files. I will create this folder now. And inside the build folder, we will have one CSS file and one subfolder with another CSS file. Let's configure Webpack to clean this folder as well. Clean once before build patterns removes old files before Webpack generates the new files. You can specify an array of the file patterns which you wanna remove. All patterns are related to the Webpack output.path directory. In our case, this is the dist folder. This means to remove all the files together with subdirectories inside the dist folder, no matter how many nesting levels there are. This is how clean once before build patterns looks by default if you don't modify it. However, if you wanna remove the files outside of the dist folder, you should specify an absolute path to the file patterns. This will remove all the files together with subfolders inside the build folder. Let's check how it works. I will go to the text editor. And now you can see that the build folder is empty. This means that Webpack removed all the files together with subdirectories from this folder. So in this video we learned how to use Clean Webpack plugin in order to keep the dist folder nice and clean. In the previous videos we added MD5 hash to our bundle and learned how to keep the dist folder nice and clean. But did you notice what happened to our HTML file? You're right, absolutely nothing. So if I open it now in the browser, our application will be broken. You see, there is an empty page here, and there are 2 errors in the browser console. Do you know why it's broken? If I go to the HTML file, you'll see that the references to our bundles don't include MD5 hash. This reference doesn't include MD5 hash, and this reference as well doesn't include MD5 hash. So in order to fix our small website, we need to change these references. So now I will just copy the file name from here and paste it here. I will do the same with the CSS file. Let's go to the browser and check if this fixed our website. I will reload the page. And now you see that our website works again. So does this mean that we need to change the names of the files manually after every build? Come on, we are in the 21st century. Even dishes can be washed automatically if we put them into a dishwasher. Of course, Webpack has a special plugin that updates the names of the files during each build. This plugin is called HTML Webpack plugin, and it can also create the whole HTML file for us, so we don't have to worry about that. Let's go to the Webpack configuration and add this plugin to the list of plugins. Now let's import this plugin at the beginning of the file. The only thing that's left is to install it via npm. Let's run the build process and have a look at the dist folder. I will go to the text editor and look inside the dist folder. It looks like we have a new file inside the dist folder. And this file is called index.html. Webpack generated this file automatically when we run the build process. This file looks pretty much the same as our own index.html, except that the formatting is not so nice. However, there is one more thing we need to adjust. the path to our bundles still starts with the prefix dist. Since our HTML file is also located inside the dist folder, as the bundles themselves, we don't need this prefix anymore, so we need to remove this prefix. Webpack generates this prefix according to the public path option. And we can change this option right here. So instead of dist, I will leave it empty. Now let's run the build process again. I will go back to the text editor and open the index.html file. And now I can see that there is no dist prefix anymore. As you can see, now we have two HTML files. One HTML file is generated by Webpack and located inside the dist folder, and another HTML file is located in the root directory of our project that we created ourselves. So let's remove this second file because we don't need it anymore. We will only use the HTML file generated by Webpack. Let's open this HTML file in the browser and check if everything works. As you can see, everything still works, even though we are using HTML file that was generated automatically. In the next video, we'll learn how to customize some stuff inside this HTML file. In the previous video, we learned how to generate the HTML file automatically during each build. In this video,
Mau lele kepala apa buntut?
Semuanya?
Enggak,
Kok bisa? Masa aku dikasih kepala doang?
buntutnya aja.
Hah? Kalau aku bilang kepala, kepala aja gitu. Gimana? Emang lelenya lele jumbo kayak kemarin?
Buntut.
Lele jumbo? Ya udah buntut atau kemarin kan kepala. Dede Jalaluddin. Sini. Sini Dede Jalaluddin. Nih, jalan sini ya. Sini ikut ngoding sama Abi ya. Ikut ngoding sama Abi ya. Nih, pulpen.
times. Wait,
We are going to learn how to customize this file. In particular, we are going to pass custom options to it. If you look carefully at the generated file, you will notice that Webpack changed the page title. Earlier, the title was Hello World, and now it is Webpack App. We want our title back, and there is a way to get it back. Let's go to the Webpack configuration. Here we can pass additional options to this plugin. For example, we can specify a custom title. Actually, we can customize more things. We can also specify the name of the generated file and provide additional meta tag. Let's
Meta tag.
specify a custom file name. By the way, we can also specify a subfolder here. This tells Webpack to create a subfolder in the dist folder and put the HTML file inside this subfolder. Let's provide an additional meta tag.
Meta tag.
This tells Webpack to add a description meta tag to the page. Let's run the build process and check if anything changes. Let's go back to the text editor. As you can see, now we have a subfolder inside the dist folder. And inside this subfolder there is our HTML file. It
Meta
has
tag.
our own title, which is Hello World,
Meta
and our
tag.
own description, which is some description. Let's leave the file name as it was by default. I will remove the file name from options. There are more options you can customize. All these options are listed on the GitHub page of this plugin. If you scroll down, you will see the list of options you can customize. This is the list of options. It's quite big. By the way, you can even provide your own template for the HTML file. This way you can fully customize how it looks. In the next video, you'll see how you can do it.
Meta tag.
In this video,
Ini. Bunyi tik 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 gitu ya. Tik 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 gitu.
we are going to create our own
Bentar ya. Taruh sini deh. Sama Abi sini. Hap 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 hap. Hap 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 hap. Hap 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 hap. Itu nih beta itu seneng. Pantesan no. Au. 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 Sakit. Let's go.
Template for generating HTML files.
Suaranya mana ya?
First of all, we need to decide which template engine we are going to use. There are plenty of template engines out there. You can use Pug, EJS, Underscore, Handlebars, and so on. All of them will give you similar results. Which one to use is just a matter of your personal preference. I like Handlebars the most, so in this course we are going to use Handlebars. Handlebars is a template engine for JavaScript that allows you to separate the business logic from presentation. If you find yourself generating HTML inside
Yeay,
your
ada
entire
viewernya
script, then
satu.
you probably need some kind
Ada
of
satu
template engine.
viewernya. Wah, senang banget. Ini siapa yang nonton ya?
Siapa ya yang nonton ya? Viewernya satu ini. Aduh, seneng banget. Ya suara orang kepring juga. Siapa yang nonton ya?
Let's create our first handlebars template. We are going to create this template inside the src folder. HBS is an extension for handlebars templates. I will copy the HTML markup from the generated HTML file and put it here. Let's improve formatting a bit. We also need to remove the references to the bundles. Webpack will add these references automatically during the build process. The names of the generated files will be different each time because we are using MD5 hash in the bundle name. You can put everything you need inside this handlebars file. Webpack will use it as a template while generating the HTML file during the build process. In our case, I will leave the template as it is, but I will change the title and description in order to use handlebars variables. This is the handlebars variable. We will assign this variable in the Webpack configuration. I will also put the handlebars variable instead of the title. Now let's tell Webpack to use our template while generating HTML file. I will go to the Webpack configuration. And here I will pass a new option, which is called template. Here I specify the path to the file that we just created. We also need to provide the description variable. It should be specified on the same level as title. Webpack will take handlebars variables from here and here. Since we are using a new type of file here, HBS, we need to teach Webpack how to handle this type of file. We are going to use a new loader here, which is called handlebars loader. And since we are using a new loader, we need to install it. We also need to install handlebars package itself. Let's run the build process and see what happens. It seems everything works fine. Let's go check the dist folder. We still have index.html inside the dist folder. This time Webpack used our own template for generating this file. Let's have a look at it in the browser. It seems everything still works. Congratulations! In this video, we learned how to tell Webpack to use our own template while generating HTML. loader, HBS, we need to teach Webpack how to handle this type of file. We are going to use a new loader here, which is called handlebars loader. This is the handlebars variable. We will assign this variable in the Webpack configuration. I will also put the handlebars variable instead of the title. We also need to remove the references to the bundles. In the previous videos, we talked about Webpack plugins. First, we have seen how we can make the resulting JavaScript bundle take less space on disk. This also improves the loading time of the whole application. Then we extracted all our CSS into a separate CSS bundle. Then we learned how we can generate HTML files during the build process. We used only several plugins in this section, but you noticed that it's quite easy to include a new plugin into your Webpack configuration. Here is the list of all official Webpack plugins. If you need to use a plugin from this list, just click on the link and go to the respective plugin page in order to see how to configure this particular plugin for your project. There are a lot of third-party plugins not included in this list. I won't be surprised if somebody created a Webpack plugin that can make you a coffee while you are waiting for the build to finish. Usually, production builds require different setup than development builds. In
Matiin air.
Matiin air. Dede ke film sama Abi ya.
production, we want our website to be as fast as possible and our bundles should be as small as possible. On the other hand, during development, we often want to see an additional information inside our JavaScript code, like for example source maps and other stuff. In this section, we will talk about the differences between production and development builds and how to make our Webpack configurations serve both use cases. In this video, we are going to talk about the mode option. Remember, we have a special option called Mode in our Webpack configuration. This option enables certain built-in optimizations for production builds and development builds. By the way, the Mode option became available starting from Webpack 4. Earlier versions of Webpack required much more configuration in order to get the same results. In the beginning of this course, we have set this option to none. This means that we don't want any kind of built-in optimizations. Now it's time to change the value of this option. There are 3 possible values that we can put here. None, development, and production. Let's set mode option to different values and compare what happens with our bundle. First, let's set it to production. Production mode enables quite a long list of different plugins, including Cursor plugin. If you want to see the full list of plugins, you can go to the official Webpack documentation. Here you can find the full list of plugins. The mode option also sets process.env.nodenv variable to production. We can use this variable in our code to check if we are in production mode or in development mode. Let's go to index.js and see how it works. I will add a little bit of code here that will check nodenv variable. If nodenv variable equals to production, we will print production mode to the browser console. On the other hand, if this variable equals to development, we will print development mode to the browser console. Production and development modes handle errors differently. In order to see what I mean, let's make some intentional error. We are going to invoke a method that does not exist. Now we need to run our build in the terminal. Let's make some intentional error. We are going to invoke a method that does not exist. Now we need to run our build in the terminal. Let's go to the browser and look into the browser console. I will copy the full path to index.html and paste it into the browser navigation bar. In the browser console, we can see that we are in production mode and that we have an error. Because all our JavaScript code is bundled inside one file and minified, we just see that this error comes somewhere from bundle.js, from line 1. If I click on that line, I will go to the minified JavaScript code. It's very hard to understand anything here. Now let's change the mode option to development and run our build again. So let's go to the browser and check the page one more time. I refreshed my page and now we see that we are in development mode and that we have an error coming specifically from index.js at line 16. If I click on that line, I will go to the readable version of our source files to that specific line. And here I can see that I'm calling the method that does not exist. This is already much better. This works because development mode uses source maps by default. In this video, we have seen how we can use mode option for optimizing our production and development builds. In the previous video, you've seen how you can use mode option in order to change Webpack behavior for production and development builds. First, we changed the mode option in the Webpack configuration to production, and then to development. Following this practice, we would need to set mode option to development while developing our application, and change it to production every time we want to deploy the application. This is not very convenient. In this video, I will show you how to manage effectively different configurations for production and development builds. In fact, this is quite easy. We just need to create two separate configuration files, one file for production builds and another file for development builds. This is extremely useful, taking into consideration that these config files have much more differences than just the mode option. So I will rename our webpack.config.js to webpack.production.config.js. And I will also create one more file, webpack.dev.config.js. For now, I will copy everything from the production configuration into this file. However, we need to adjust these configurations. First, let's adjust our production configuration. We need to set mode option to production. We can say
Hah? Ah, Oh, aku tuh lagi ngebahas ini uangnya untuk itu.
Bukan. Untuk pegawai mah harus kita. Iya, tapi bagi perusahaan itu misalnya ada yang meninggal, uang, dia keluarga dari mana, jadi dari warga-warga itu kan.
Soalnya si Ibu juga pakai yayasan bunga kamunya gitu, bayarnya cuma 5.000. Pakai yayasan buat si ibu mah. Si ibu mah.
Safely remove Cursor plugin because in production mode this plugin is included by default. We also need to remove this plugin from imports. Everything else in this file is suitable for production. So our production configuration looks fine. Now let's go to the development configuration and remove everything that we don't need. First, we need to make sure that the mode option is set to development. We don't need content hash in development mode because we don't need browser caching during the development. We can also remove Cursor plugin from plugins array because we don't need to minify our code during development. Code minification is an extra step that takes time. It makes sense to minify the output files in production when we need to optimize the page load time in order to improve the customer experience. However, during the development phase, we should optimize the performance of the build process in order to improve the developer experience. Due to the same reason, we also don't need to extract all our CSS into a separate file during the development phase. It's mostly needed for production, so we can safely remove mini CSS extract plugin from the plugins array. We can safely use style loader instead. All these changes should make the development build faster. You won't notice any difference in a small application, however, in larger applications this difference will be significant. Since we now have two configuration files instead of one, we should make it possible to run them separately. This can be easily done using npm scripts. We should have two different npm scripts, one for production and one for development. Let's go to the package.json and specify two different scripts. At the moment, there is only one script here. We are going to continue using this script for production purposes. Now I will create a new script that we're gonna use for development purposes. In this script I will change the configuration file so it points to the development configuration. Now let's check how these scripts work. First, I will run the production script. Production script works fine. Let's now check the development script. Development script also works fine. So in this video we created two separate Webpack configurations for production and development purposes. In the previous video we created two separate configurations for development and production builds. We did it because our development build should have another settings than the production build in order to work faster. While developing new features, we want to spend as little time as possible waiting for our code to build. Ideally, we want to see our changes in the browser instantly, even without rebuilding stuff. I have a good news for you, guys and girls, we can make it happen. And in this video I will show you how. Right now we need to install Webpack dev server npm package. It provides all the things we need. So I'm going to my terminal now and I'm going to install Webpack dev server. Now we need to specify options for the dev server. We can just go to our development configuration and add a couple of lines of code. I'm going to Webpack dev config. And here I'm going to add a new option called dev server. This is a JavaScript object, and inside we can specify various options related to Webpack dev server package. In this video we are going to use 4 options out of many provided by Webpack dev server. First of all, we need to specify a port on which this server will be running. I will put 9000 here. Next, I'm going to tell Webpack dev server what exactly should be served on that port. Here I will simply point Webpack to the dist folder. In this case, I can copy the actual path from here and paste it here. Now I wanna define the file that's gonna be used as the index file. In this case, we are going to use index.html. And the last option we're gonna use today is called write to disk. By default, Webpack dev server generates files in memory and doesn't save them to disk. In this case, your dist folder is going to be empty, even though the application would be available in the browser. Quite often, this is causing a lot of confusion among people, therefore I would recommend to enable this option. Then Webpack dev server will explicitly write the generated files to the dist folder, and you'll be able to have a look at them if needed. Now we need to change the npm script for development use case in order to point it to Webpack dev server. Let's go to the package.json. And here you can see our development script. So I will replace this command with Webpack serve command. And at the end of this command I will add --hot. --hot enables hot module replacement which is also a great feature provided by Webpack Dev Server out of the box. And that's it. Let's run the development script and see what happens. It seems I've made a typo somewhere. Let's go back to the text editor. Here it is. Let's run the development script again. This time everything works. As you can see, Webpack says that the project is running at http localhost 9000. Let's open this URL in the browser. And here we are having our page that's already familiar to you. Now I will put my browser together with my text editor on one screen, side by side. And now let's change something inside any JavaScript file. I'm going to create the second heading. Just copying these two lines. And changing the variable into heading 2. So yeah, I've created a second heading and the magic begins. I'm saving the file and you saw it! We got an updated version in our browser instantly, without running Webpack in the terminal. Pure magic! We can do the same with our CSS. I will go to the Hello World button styles and change the color of the button. And I'm saving the file. You saw it again, it works instantly. In this video, we learned how to get our changes in the browser without manually running Webpack and also have seen some magic. Let's clean up a bit after previous video so that we can continue with other sections. I will remove the second heading from our page, because I think one heading is enough, and I will change the color of the button back to green. First, let's remove the second heading. Now let's fix our CSS. I need to go to the hello world button.scss file, and here I will change the color of the button back to green. Now we are ready to continue with other sections.
Sulit. Brr.
Aku bawa ini.
Hei, kemarin ketinggalan yang pulpen ya.
Iya.
Tuh mandi tuh sama Dede Zahra sana mandi.
Lupa aku mau bawa ini.
Sok sana mandi.
Nih, jadi kalau dia pengen makannya enak, terus sering-sering pernah olahraga, ini lapar aja. Lapar dia.
Ih, cakep benar. Bisa diekspor ke MD file. Ih,
Until this moment, we have used Webpack in order to take all our modules and put them together into a single bundle.js file. As a result, this bundle.js contains all our JavaScript code. This approach is widely used when there is a need to create a single-page application, but this is not the only usage of Webpack. In some projects, we need to have more than one HTML page, especially if these HTML pages are rendered on the server side. Then most probably, server sends different pages to the browser depending on the URL that you write in the navigation bar. Like for example, if we go to our Hello World page, then we see our Hello World button, and if we go to a separate Kiwi page, we will see our Kiwi image. Remember, we imported this image earlier at the beginning of this course. By the way, these two pages may also have something in common, for example, low-dash library. Then we need to find out how to handle these common dependencies as well. In this section, we will learn how to split our JavaScript code into multiple bundles and create multiple HTML files for different pages of our website. Let's imagine that our website should consist. Until this moment, we have used Webpack in order to take all our modules and put them together into a single bundle.js file. As a result, this bundle.js contains all our JavaScript code. This approach is widely used when there is a need to create a single-page application. But this is not the only usage of Webpack. In some projects, we need to have more than one HTML page, especially if these HTML pages are rendered on the server side. Then most probably, server sends different pages to the browser depending on the URL that you write in the navigation bar. Like for example, if we go to our Hello World page, then we see our Hello World button, and if we go to a separate Kiwi page, we will see our Kiwi image. Remember, we imported this image earlier at the beginning of this course. By the way, these two pages may also have something in common, for example, low-dash library. Then we need to find out how to handle these common dependencies as well. In this section, we will learn how to split our JavaScript code into multiple bundles and create multiple HTML files for different pages of our website. Our website should consist of two pages. One is Hello World page, which we already have, and the second one is Kiwi page, which we have just seen in the previous video. Our second page would need a new component which would add a Kiwi image to the page. In this video, we will create this component. All it will do is just adding our Kiwi image to the body DOM element. We will create a new folder inside the components folder for our new component. I will name this folder Kiwi image. And I will move the Kiwi image that we already have to this new folder. Now we need to create the component itself, so I will create a new JavaScript file. I will also name it Kiwi image.js. And inside this file we will create our Kiwi image component. So I will create a new class, Kiwi image, and this class will have only one function inside, which is render. Inside this function we will create our image element and then add it to the body DOM element. I will add src to this image element, which should be a path to our Kiwi image. For this, we would need to import our image into this file. And now I can use Kiwi as an src. We would also put an alt attribute here. And I will add a class, a CSS class to this element, because we would need to do some styling. Now we already have our image element. What we need to do now is to add this element to the existing body DOM element of our page. Okay, it seems we are done. Now we need to export our Kiwi image class from this file, so later we can import it inside our new page. I missed a space here. This component will also have some CSS, so we will add it as well. Inside our Kiwi image folder, I will create yet another file, which will be called Kiwi image.scss. And inside this file, I will add some simple CSS to our image. I will specify display block, and I will specify some specific width for our component, so it wouldn't be very big, like, for example, 400 pixels. And also I will put height auto. Now we need to import this CSS file inside the main component file. So I will go to kiwiimage.js, and right below the importing our image, I will import CSS as well. It seems our component is ready now. In the next video, we will create a page that will use this component. In this video, we will learn how to create two separate JavaScript bundles instead of one. In our future videos, we will include the first JavaScript bundle on the Hello World page and the second JavaScript bundle on the Kiwi page. So let's create our second page. We will reuse our Kiwi image component that we created in the previous video. I will create a new JavaScript file for our Kiwi page. And I will name this file kiwi.js. This JavaScript file will represent our second page, Kiwi page. It will look very similar to Hello World page, except that it will render an image instead of the button. First, let's import heading component, because this page will also have a heading at the top. And let's create an instance of the heading component and render it on the page. Besides the heading, we also gonna render the Kiwi image. Let's import the Kiwi image component that we created in the previous video. Okay, now we need to instantiate this component and render it on the page. Great, this page is ready now. Let's rename our existing index JavaScript file into Hello World.
Halo? Halo?
Yud, Yud.
Ya?
Hari putih aja.
Ayah, Muti.
Ini mau ke sana gitu.
Mau ke sana cenah.
Now we have two different JavaScript files that basically represent two different entry points that should be included inside two different HTML pages. Let's tell Webpack to create two separate JavaScript bundles out of those two files. I need to go to Webpack production configuration file, and here I need to change how the entry point is defined. We are going to put here two entry points instead of one. Basically, what we need to do is to replace this string with a JavaScript object, and this object is going to have two properties. Each of the properties will point to one of the pages we are going to have. First, I will define Hello World page. It will point to helloworld.js file. The second property will be called Kiwi, and it will point to kiwi.js. Since we have two entry points instead of one, we need to specify somehow that their names should be different. In general, file name option determines the name of each output bundle. This bundle is written to the folder specified by the output.path option. With current configuration, both our bundles will be named bundle.js. Of course, they will have content hash in their name, which would be different for each of those pages, but I think it would be much nicer if we could name them differently. Actually, we can tell Webpack to use file names that we specified in our entry points. We just need to replace bundle with name in square brackets. Webpack will take the name of the entry point from here and put it here. And for the second file, Webpack will take the name from here and put it here. The most common substitutions that can be used are name in square brackets, content hash in square brackets, and ID in square brackets. We are already using name and content hash. ID will insert the internal chunk ID in the name of the generated bundle and not a human readable name. We want to have a human readable name here, therefore let's use name in our application. It's also possible to combine multiple substitutions in the file name, and this is what we are doing here. It's even possible to define a function that will return the file name, but I never needed to make it that complex. By the way, we can do the same trick for CSS files. The file name option will not affect the CSS files because CSS files are generated by a dedicated plugin called Mini CSS Extract plugin. We talked about this plugin earlier in this course. However, we can change the names of the generated CSS files in another place. We just need to go to the Mini CSS Extract plugin configuration and change the file name there.
Sayura,
This option
mau makan ya kamu?
Iya.
defines the names of the generated CSS files. Inside this string, we will change styles to name in square brackets. Let's run Webpack in the terminal and check what we get after these changes in our dist folder. It seems our build is done. Let's go to the text editor and have a look inside the dist folder. We see that we now have two JavaScript files inside our dist folder. One file is called helloworld.something.js and another file is called kiwi.something.js. And we also have two CSS files. So in this video we learned how to split our code into multiple bundles. In the previous video we learned how to split our JavaScript code into multiple bundles, but if you run Webpack now, you will see that all our bundles are included inside one HTML file, which is index.html. Let's check it. I've just run Webpack, and let's go to the text editor and check what we have inside the dist folder. Let's have a look at the contents of index.html file. By default, Webpack is minifying the generated HTML file in production mode. That's why there is only one long line in this file. However, it's hard to see the contents of HTML as long as it is minified. Let's turn off the minification of HTML files for now. In order to achieve this, we can add an extra option to the HTML Webpack plugin configuration. This option is called Minify. By default, this option equals to true in production mode. However, it's easy to change if we need to. Let's run Webpack one more time and have a look at the generated HTML again. Now you can easily see that all our stuff is included inside one HTML file. Here is Hello World JavaScript bundle, and here is Kiwi JavaScript bundle. And the same is true for CSS files. So all our bundles are included inside one HTML file. However, we need to generate two different HTML pages if we need to have a proper multiple page application. One page would contain Hello World button and another page would contain Kiwi image. In this video, we will learn how we can generate multiple HTML files and include different bundles inside different HTML files. Let's go to our Webpack production configuration and check the configuration for HTML Webpack plugin. Here is our HTML Webpack plugin. If we want to generate two HTML files, we need to include this plugin twice in the plugins array. So I will add a second instance of HTML Webpack plugin right below the first one. But now we need to differentiate somehow between two instances of HTML Webpack plugin. The best solution here is to provide different file names. First instance would have a name Hello World. Title would be Hello World, and description would still be Hello World. As for the template, we are currently using index.hbs, but I think we need to rename it to something else, because it's no longer index anymore. I will rename it to something more generic, like page template. And here I will update the reference to this file. So now we need to adjust the second instance of HTML Webpack plugin. We also need to provide a file name here, and it will be kiwi.html. I will also change title to Kiwi. And I will change the description as well. I also need to update the template here. But now, how do we know which JavaScript bundles to include here and which bundles to include here? HTML Webpack plugin has a special option called chunks. Using this option, we can specify which bundles we need to include where. Let's add chunks option to both our pages. This is an array, so we can specify multiple chunks for each HTML file. But in our case, we need only one chunk. In the first instance of HTML Webpack plugin, we would use Hello World chunk. And in the second instance, we would use Kiwi chunk. Chunk names are specified here in the entry point object. Let's run Webpack now and check how many HTML files we will get afterwards. Let's go to the dist folder and check what we have there. If you have a look at the dist folder, you will notice that now we have two HTML files here. One is Kiwi and another one is Hello World HTML. Let's have a look at Hello World HTML file. And we can see here that there is only one CSS file referenced inside, which is helloworld.something.css. And there is only one JavaScript file called helloworld.something.js. And if we have a look inside kiwi.html file, we can see that here we also have only one CSS file and only one JavaScript file. So in this video we learned how we can generate multiple HTML files and include different bundles inside different HTML files. In this video, we are going to learn how to handle common dependencies between multiple bundles. Earlier we have seen how we can split our JavaScript code between multiple bundles and how to generate multiple HTML pages. But sometimes all your website pages depend on some common library or a framework, and you probably don't want that library to be included in each and every generated bundle. Let's have a look at the following example. Imagine that you wanna show the name of the current page in the heading. In order to do this, we need to modify our heading component. I will go to the file where we defined the heading component. And here I'm going to modify the contents of the h1 element. I will add here the page name variable. Since we are using a page name variable here, we need to add it as an argument to the render function. And now, since we added this argument to the render function, we need to change all the invocations of this function. There are two places where we use this component. First place is in the helloworld.js and the second place is in the kiwi.js. First, I will go to the helloworld.js file. I need to pass one argument here, and this is going to be the name of the page. Which is hello world in this case. In order to make the first letter of this string uppercase, I am going to use lodash. Here I am using the lodash function called upperFirst. This function will make the first letter of our hello world string a capital letter. Please note that this is not the best solution for making uppercase strings, but it suits our example ideally. In order to use lodash library, we need to import this library first. And we also need to install it. So I will go to the terminal and install lodash.
Kenapa, Deh?
Okay, Lodash is installed now. Now I need to go back to the editor and make
Apa teh? Kenapa? Kenapa teh? Kenapa? 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 Itu balon. Kenapa balonnya? Kenapa balonnya? Kenapa? Itu ya. Jauh. Ini tinggal ambil aja. Kenapa harus nangis? Allahu Akbar. Umi cepat mandi, Umi. Kamu belum sholat apa-apa. Kenapa?
Mas ini kalau pakai BPJS, nanti sama ceknya sama bilang dulu. Nanti aku di sini loh, di sini belum ketemu ya.
Aduh, terus ya.
Kan waktu kemarin nggak jadi. Waktu kemarin nggak aku bilang di, nah kemudian aku berwarna pas tadi, nah jadi ada tadi ada aku makan lagi. Masa aku main lagi? Enggak mau main.
Aku udah mandi. Aku disuruh langsung mandi.
Oh ya. Terus lagi papaya. Iya, sana kerennya sana deh, jangan jaga jalan aja.
Balonnya apa sih?
Oh.
Semakin dari untukmu semakin membuatku tak berdaya.
Papayanya sama kerennya.
Mati komputer. Mati komputer.
Kamu mau makan guys?
Mau makan itu sebenarnya tapi udah diusir ke sana gimana makannya? Ntar ya, nyanyiin dulu.
Gejala. Dia belum minum, minum dulu. Gejala.
Tiriring ting tiriring.
Saya